Hi guys, I just wanted to make a video regarding the subject of a campaign to withhold remittances to the Philippines during this time in their efforts of Filipinos to support the campaign to bring President Rodrigo Roa Duterte back to the Philippines. The way I see it is this. Firstly, I'd like to say this is not me criticizing the government. I'm a foreigner. I have no right to criticize the government. I have no right to criticize the current administration. I see this on a human level. I've been concerned now for a very long time that when families can't find sufficient resources to stay back home to Pilipinas, many of them have to choose to work abroad, so they can afford medicines, they can afford healthcare, they can afford education. Life is pretty tough in the Philippines, and unless you have a person within your family working abroad, it's really, really tough to manage. And I fully understand that. I'm so upset when I hear stories of families being split up. Parents don't see their children walk for the first time. Parents don't see their children going through school, going through college. There are some Filipinos around the world who only go home every 5 years or 10 years, so they don't see their relatives. And I've heard so many stories of OFWs receiving the news that their mother or their father has passed away back home in the Philippines, and they weren't there for that occasion. So they have to quickly fly back home while their parents take their last breath. This is a really serious issue, and I've said before, and I'll say this again, I really do hope and pray that there will come a day where Filipinos won't have to work abroad. On the one hand, I've always been grateful for the Filipino healthcare professionals in the United Kingdom because I believe they are some of the best in the world. And whenever I go to a country in the Middle East or around the world and I see Filipino workers, of course I'm happy to see them. But the other side of it is this. Filipinos remit billions of pesos a year back home to the Philippines. And this contributes towards the Philippine economy, or the gross domestic product, the GDP of the Philippines. Is it 5 or 6%? I'm not sure. But I also know that during the last global pandemic, during the no, it's not during the last global pandemic, during the last major recession, which I believe was 2012, the Philippines was one of the only countries in the world who was unaffected by the global recession, because it just meant that OFWs had to work longer hours and send more money home. So this message is just to say that, of course, don't restrict money from your families, because if it turns out your families need something in emergency, of course you need to send it. And it's not for me to get behind this campaign. I've no right to. I'm a foreigner. But all I can say is this, I believe in the right of legitimate protest. I believe the rights of Filipinos to rally, to petition, to protest is perfectly acceptable. And people have to understand, who are critics of this campaign going on at the moment, people have to understand that those Filipinos in the Middle East are not allowed to rally. They're not allowed to take the streets due to local laws. They don't even have access to some social media platforms due to local laws in their respective country. What they do have, though, is the right to decide when they send money home to their loved ones. It's a Filipino's choice when they remit their money. The money doesn't belong to anybody else other than the OFW who's earned that money through blood, sweat and tears. And whether they decide to send money home or they stop sending money home for a particular week, that I believe that is a legitimate form of protest. And I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not saying I'm behind it or I support it. I'm not able to do that as a foreigner. All I'm able to do is say that we should stop relying on the need for overseas Filipino workers to go home. We're talking about human labor, and nobody should benefit other than the Filipino going around the world and their immediate family. And the OFW dollar shouldn't be relied upon anymore. You know, there should be more opportunities in the Philippines to find people to find greater jobs, you know, to get better pay. You know, people should be paying more taxes. I've said for the longest time, you know, you'll go to a mall and you'll buy a particular, I bought a fresh orange in a mall and it cost me 300 pesos for that fresh orange. And the employee in the mall said to me, you know, you enjoy that orange, but what you're actually drinking is half my daily salary. And this is the point, you know, people don't get paid enough back home. And this is why there are so many billionaires in the Philippines. If they had to pay more wages or more for their labor costs, you know, there wouldn't be so many billionaires in the Philippines. You know, the human labor is something that can't be bargained with. You know, it can't be relied upon. As I said, and I've said before, it's the blood, sweat, and tears of the Filipino people. It's their money and they should be able to do whatever they want with it. You know, people can ignore me. I'm a foreigner. I've got no rights to get involved in that. But, you know, as a fellow human being who've heard tragic stories about OFWs going abroad, getting cancer, dying abroad, not being able to go see their loved ones and dying overseas. I see stories of OFWs working into their 70s or 80s, relentlessly sending money back home and not enjoying their life, not enjoying their retirement. And I do hope this would change. I hope that one day going abroad would become, in order to work, would become a choice and not a necessity. Anyway, thank you very much for watching and listening. Maraming salamat po. Mabuhay Pilipinas.